Coach, good to see you.
Good to see you.
And good to have you in Bowling Green. I look forward to a great weekend. I want to extend my congratulations to you and Jackie Harbaugh family for the honor that the university has bestowed upon on you two with the naming of the stadium club in your honor. I think that's just wonderful. I've gotten tremendous comments about this as people have learned about it in the last few days.
Oh, we're very humbled and honored. 14 years, this was home for us on Belmont Avenue, and a little short jaunt to work and back home. And so this is home for us. But for me personally, the thing that I'm most proud of with the recognition is to see Jackie's name there. 51 years in November, we've been married, and she is the rock, the foundation of this family. She was there with those youngsters through all those years, good times, bad times, when she allowed me and permitted me to do something that I had a love and passion for, and that was coaching football. That was coaching some other, someone else's children, and she allowed me to do that. But the thing she did that was really outstanding is she brought our kids to work. We'd be practicing, or we'd be in the office. We'd have 25, 30 minutes off, and she would bring the lunches over, and she'd let them run around, and she let our kids see what their dad did. And I think that's one of the reasons that all of them, in some form or fashion, decided to cast their lot with athletics. And that's a great tribute to Jackie and her raising those three children.
And she got quite involved as well with our student athletes while she was here. Your children were grown, and her talents in tutoring and counseling with student athletes was quite valuable to the whole athletic department, not just football.
Interesting thing now, Paul, is we'll get a call every once in a while. Maybe every month, or maybe every 7, 8, 9 weeks, someone will call. And maybe in some of them we haven't connected for years. And they'll say, "Coach, we got your telephone number. We just wanted to call and say hello. Oh, by the way, is Mrs. Harbaugh there?" And they want to talk to Jackie because of what you alluded to, is the fact that she would, with some of our youngsters, she would take 2 hours every day and meet over in Smith Stadium, and they would to work on academics and counseling and that type of thing. Not just academics, but counseling about life and about the transition from high school to college. And some of these youngsters, haven't seen this, and it was a fast transition. And so they really identify with her in those life skills as much, if not more, than they identify with me.
Right. It's going to be a full weekend. You're going to have an opportunity to see, I think we've got 60 or 70 former players from your 1992 and 2002 football teams here. It's going to be a lot of fun. We're looking forward, the W Club's looking forward to hosting them pregame, and I hope you and Jackie will drop by as well. And we've got a lot of things going. It's going to be great to see those guys. 92, that wasn't your best team, but certainly in my mind that team holds a very special place in the history of Western Kentucky football, Western Kentucky athletics, the university. There were a lot of challenges that year that most schools never experienced, that threatened budget cuts were forced upon us and forced the football team and the athletic department to address. Can you revisit a little of that with us?
The 92 team, that group of youngsters, they are more responsible for the 2002 national championship than anyone can possibly describe. In 1992, it was a March, Friday afternoon, about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The athletics director and I went to the president's office, and he laid it out. I mean, there was no discussion. It wasn't anything other than, here it is. The football program has been
suspended. I think
it's been suspended. That's exactly the word.
I think that is the term they used.
They just suspended, and the votes were there. The vote wasn't going to be taken until the end of April, but the votes were there. We were scheduled to begin spring practice on Tuesday, and strongly recommended that we go to the team and explain the situation to them and tell them that there would be no spring practice for the fear of risking injury and exposing those youngsters to that type of a situation. So to tell the team that we're packing the uniform away and there would be no more football on our campus. Walked down the hill. We had no idea this was coming. I mean, there was no reason to believe that this was in the air. So we walked down the hill, and we were to meet with the players, and we met with the players, And I had no plan other than tell them just exactly what we had just heard. I explained it to them just the way it was explained to me. And I told them we have a decision to make. We're going to make it right now. And the decision is that we will have spring practice on Tuesday. We're going to go through it as if we're going to play a full season. We're going to go through it as if one of those votes can be changed. And it's going to be a physical spring practice, maybe as physical as any one we've had. And if there's anyone that doesn't feel that they want to commit to that, I totally understand. And none of their teammates will hold them accountable for that decision. I certainly wouldn't. No one on the coaching staff would. And the other option is just say we don't want to do it, and we don't want to risk injury, and we're going to put it away. And it wasn't a Paul. There wasn't a blink of the eye. Every hand went up. Coach, we're in. Not one man walked away. And we went out and had spring practice. And you remember, I mean, we had scrimmages on Saturday, and we'd get 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 people come to the scrimmages, and they would wear hats, save football, and the three guys that really stepped up: Jimmy Fikes, Butch Gilbert, and Mickey Riggs. Mm-hmm. And the way I jump around here, but after they said they're in, what do you do now? Mm-hmm. I had nowhere to turn. So I called Coach Fikes' house. No one was there. I called Butch's house. No one was there. Called Mickey's house, and they were all over there having dinner. And I said, I have to tell you what's transpired. They didn't know. And they were, what are we going to do? So they put their heads together that night and came up with a little plan that we were going to go call our alums, call the former players, mm-hmm. get all the people we could, those in alums that might be able to make a difference. And we're going to try to save it. So that was the call, and that was an important call because they did talk to a lot of people. So we had the spring practice. We came to the vote. You remember it was up in the president's office in that boardroom.
Board of Regents room, yes.
And we're sitting there having no idea how this is going to go. And they did a bunch of stuff that I had no idea. I mean, they were doing work, voting on things, ayes and nays and ways, whatever they do. I mean, they were just. So now it came, okay, we're ready to vote on whether we're going to suspend football. And here we go. They were around that table, that semicircle table, and they were, yeah, they're just going on. I can't keep track. They're going so fast. And all at once the vote's over, and I'm thinking, do we have it or not? My math skills weren't very, very good at that time. And so someone leaned over and said, congratulations. I said, what? You got football. So then they went through and told us, that there would be two coaches. We hadn't hired. We had lost two coaches, and they didn't replace them, so we had to go without them. I think there was 12 or 13 scholarships that would be taken away from the program. And we lost half of our operating budget, which was about $500,000 that we lost.
I remember, big hit.
I mean, it was
really
but
hard.
we had football, and I remember walking down the hill, and J.J. Jewell, you remember from over at Warren Central?
Yes.
He was in the boardroom. He said, Coach, we got football. And I said, yeah, we got football. And he goes, what they did, it's devastating what they did. I said, don't worry about that. They can't possibly put those kinds of sanctions on us. They can't possibly. By the time we play, they're going to loosen up. And sure enough, they didn't. They held to it. And we went through spring practice. Now we had football, and then we got into the summer. And I know I'm talking here too much, but remember that season, the next season?
Yes, bits and pieces. It was
the greatest one was the Russians.
Oh, that was.
You remember that?
When the Czars came to town. I'll never forget that way. Neither will Jim Clark, who had to bail out the coach. That was Lee Murray, bless his heart.
He was the coach.
When you spoke of the coaches you lost, Lee came out of retirement, and as a retiree was able to.
He was working
to
with
work a certain amount of days, and he worked the football season that year on a retiree's salary, and then took over the Russians.
But this Russian outfit were all former great Russian athletes. They were Olympians, Olympian track guys that had run for gold medals. One guy was a 200-meter world champion, but he's 37, 38 years old now and couldn't run as well anymore. So, trying to find something to do. They had wrestlers, these Roman Greco wrestlers, and they
were big.
They were skilled athletes. So they pulled in down here at Keene Hall on like a Sunday night, and they get off and they got vodka. They're trying to peddle vodka. They're selling those little things. Jackie's got them at home where one doll, then another doll, and another doll. I don't know what they call that, but she bought some of those. Quiz bought one of those fur square hats that they brought. They were selling uniforms. I mean, they had come here to get some of this U.S. money.
And they were taking their money and buying blue jeans. They were buying American
They
blue
were
jeans.
doing it. So they were in Keene Hall. So the two things we did, they wanted housing and food, where there's no guarantee or anything. So our idea was we could get them and promote this as Russians and Americans coming together after the Cold War. I think the Cold War had just ended. We were going to do our part for world relations, I guess. So now we put them in Keene Hall, which is not one of the great dormitories. It wasn't then. It probably is now, but it was not one of the great dormitories. So we put them in there. And, Coach, we thought we were going to be staying in a Holiday Inn. No. So the next thing we do, we feed them. We start feeding them at McDonald's, and nothing wrong with McDonald's, and nothing wrong with Wendy's, nothing wrong, but they didn't come to eat at McDonald's. They wanted, the
steak and potatoes.
They wanted the steak and the potatoes. So they're practicing, and we're out there, and so they have a revolution on Wednesday night. They're not going to play the game because they're not eating and staying properly. So they have to bring the owner in from Houston, a guy named Rosen. So he comes in and talks them off the bridge or off the bridge. So now they're going to play. So now, great idea by Jack Harbaugh. Probably, I look back, Paul, one of my great ideas. We're going to play on Saturday. On Friday, we're going to have a united practice. The Russians and the Americans in the stadium. Our coaches are going to be working with their players. They only had one coach, a head coach, a guy from Houston.
Right.
We're going there.
From Houston.
We're going there. So he's only one coach. He was a high school coach in Houston. Then he went to Russia. We'll learn as this story goes on.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we're practicing. We're doing the drills, and all at once we look to I'm standing on the 50-yard line, looking to what was the open side of the stadium, and I see these three guys coming. They got ties and trench coats, which should have been the tip. They got trench coats, and they're walking down. I have no idea who they are. So they go, I can't remember the guys. I would say Coach Smith. Coach Smith? And he thought, well, somebody's coming for an interview or something. He said, well, I'm Coach Smith. And they said, well, Coach Smith, we're here to arrest you. You are $14,000 in arrears of spousal, whatever they call it.
Alimony or child support or whatever it was.
And then he goes like this, how'd you find me?
I know how they found him.
How'd they find him? Remember how they found him?
He'd been on the front page of USA Today. And it said he was coming to Western Kentucky.
That's exactly how they got him.
And his wife saw it. And
she had him in the country, So they take him and they handcuff him and they bring the cruiser in then and handcuff him and stick his head in the car. But we have tape on that. Do you have that tape?
Somewhere. I remember there was tape. I haven't seen it in a long time.
ABC was there. And this gal that she's still doing
We had Nashville media, Louisville media, national media for that practice.
And she does one of these. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the coach for the Russian team is being escorted off the field. And the cruiser leaves Smith Stadium and takes him to Warren County Jail. So now we don't have a coach. They don't have a coach. They had no assistants, no coach. So I'm embellishing this part of it somewhat.
No.
I am.
Okay.
I'm going to embellish this part of the story.
He wouldn't do that, Jackie.
Oh, yeah. So I said, well, we better tell the team, that, their coach has been arrested. So I said, well, the quarterback. So he had ward number 12. I said, son, come over here. I said, your coach has been arrested. Something about spousal support. He won't be coaching the game. And the guy goes, we understand. This happens a lot in our country. That part is embellished. So, go ahead.
We had the writer from Nashville, Tennessee, and he was late. And I got a call from the office that he was there. He says, Tom's here. Do you want him to come on over? And I said, well, I'll meet him in the parking lot. So I hadn't started. I wasn't in the stadium yet. I hadn't gotten there. And I went out and met him, and we walked in. And one of our trainers, he says, well, I want to talk to their coach. And I said, sure. And I can't think of his name either. I can see him.
I can picture him too.
And so I asked one of the student trainers, the coach of the Russians teams, and there was a young lady who worked with Bill Edwards. She turned her head and said, he's not here. I said, what? Where'd he go? He says, he's been arrested. And that is not what I wanted to hear.
So now
what do we do now? What's happening?
So we look around and we said we don't have a coach, and I'm trying to think of was it Lou Marciani?
Oh, Lou was the AD.
It was the AD, and he panicked. I mean,
he kind of put that package together, and it was an attention getter.
He said, "What are we going to do? They have no offense, they have no defense, they have no special teams. We need to crank out a playbook. We need to get them ready." I said, "If they're ready by tomorrow, and what they're doing, they're going to get ready in 24 hours. But they need a coach." Lee.
Yeah.
Lee was a part-time. You described it. Lee, what was it? You are now the head coach of the Russian Tsars. So now he says, "So you need an assistant." So he picks.
I don't remember.
Butch.
Was it Butch?
He picks Butch.
I didn't remember that.
So the two of them now are coaching.
Makes sense.
You need to go in and talk to your team. They were down at the one end of the locker room. So they go down and talk to the team. So we come out. So next night, 7 o'clock game time. Lee's got them going through stretching, and Butch has got them doing something. So the game starts. And they had played football maybe just months. I mean, they had no real football skills. So the first play of the game, if you go back and look at the tape, they punt from their end zone. And the punter takes like 3 steps, and the personal protector takes 3 steps back. He kicked it right up his tail. Boom! Block kick, touchdown Western. Crowd goes crazy. So now we win convincingly. But in the fourth quarter, we kicked off. It must have been at halftime we kicked off, because that's the only time they scored, I think. So we kicked off to him, and this guy catches the ball on the goal line. He's the 200-meter gold medal something, gold or silver or whatever, bronze. He is something, and he is fast. He catches the ball and hits the stride. He goes by our bench. Whoosh! I've never seen a human being. I mean, he was full stride. Whoosh! He went by. Doug Mallory was our.
Remember Doug?
He was our kickoff. Yeah, he's up there now. He's the coordinator. So he is our kickoff coverage coach. And we had struggled with kickoff coverage that year. I said, "Well, Doug, you've just taken your kickoff coverage international. The Russians have just returned one." So they score. So now the game's over. So now here's my mind, the sick, demented mind that I have, right? I'm looking around. Where is this kid? Number 35 was his number. 35.
You're looking for eligibility yet?
So I walk over to him. I said, "Son, have you ever gone to college?" To which he says, "I do not understand." I said, "We got somebody here." So they had one of their interpreters. They had an interpreter. I said, "Come over here. Ask him if he's ever gone to college." He asked him. He says, "No, never been in college." "We have a full scholarship for you. You're 36 years old. You can come here and we get 4 years of eligibility." "No, think I stay in my country." So we came that close, Paul, to really bringing the countries together.
That was some week. That was some week. I know when he was arrested, Jim Clark had to work with him. He was a young fellow just starting in our program then, and he had to work with him all week. He was the one Lou assigned, and he called me. He said, "Paul," says, "I got to go downtown and talk to this guy." He says, "I can't go by myself. Will you go?"
So you guys went down.
So we went down and talked to him, and he was pretty resigned. He was not going to make the rest of the tour.
What he did though on Monday, the story's getting too long, but on Monday he calls from the Warren County and wanted to know if I could bring a tape down to him or send a tape down to him so he could watch the game. I said, "I don't think you're going to be needing a tape."
That was one of the quirkiest events I believe I've ever been involved in on this campus. And I had forgotten it was '92. We were stirring interest, and we had an open date early, wasn't it?
Exhibition
open date early in the exhibition game with those folks.
You and I don't mean to interrupt you, but you and I had a discussion on that. You remember the discussion?
No, I don't.
I said, "Paul, why doesn't it count for a win for me?" I was struggling for wins. Things weren't coming that easy. I said, "Paul, why not?"
A win is a win is a win.
And Paul said, "Well, you can't count that. It's an
exhibition
game." I said, "Exhibition? Well, you just count it as a win." And you never gave in on that one, did you?
Couldn't have sold that to the NCAA, I don't think. But that was a special group of kids.
It was.
And we had our ups and downs that year. I think we had a winning record. We did. One thing that we haven't mentioned among our season ticket holders was Roy Kidd.
Yeah, that's
and
right.
A number of we had coaches from around the country buying season tickets to Western football in support of Western Kentucky University maintaining a football program. And I thought that spoke, and not just coaches, but lots of people out and about with only the vaguest connection to our program. And among them was Roy Kidd, which was quite a positive statement considering the long-term rivalry. It was a critical point in the history of this institution, and without their decision in the locker room that day, and they're doing everything they could under limited circumstances to put the coaches, your staff, the players, putting the product on the field, and committing the time and the effort and getting the results that you did under the circumstances, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about this today.
And then you look at places like Wichita,
yes,
and you look at places like Xavier, you look at places like Detroit, you look at all those were high-profile programs at one time that dropped it. And once you drop it, you don't normally bring it back. There are a few programs that have, but not to the level that you get to where we are now or espouse to be.
No. As a part of everything that happened in '92, support came from everywhere. Fans, students, alumni, just all over the place. And among the key individuals there were the parents of our student athletes.
There's no question about it. It's a great point you bring up. When all that went down, I'm sure the first thing that these kids did on that Friday evening was call home and said, we may not have a program. And then you get these parents that all, what's going on here? We sent our kids there. You promised them you did there. Now you,
quite naturally so,
you can't deliver. We got phone calls. I mean, we got a lot of phone calls. But the question the parents asked was, how can we help? What can we do? You just tell us what you need us to do to get this thing in a good situation, and we're going to do it for you. I remember Dan McGrath's dad up in Chicago. He was only a recruit. I mean, we had just recruited him. He just signed a national letter saying he's coming to Western, and now all at once they're telling him they're not going to have football. And he got involved, again, in a positive way, and how can I help? He came down on his own and visited with the press and talked with some individuals that he thought in the community that might be able to make a difference. So that was, but those apples don't fall very far from the tree. When those youngsters said that they were committed, the parents were going to say,
the parents came on quite easily after the team as individuals voted as a group to keep it. So there was something to work for. It wasn't written off.
No, they knew there was a crack in the door. And then the three other individuals I mentioned, and I know there were a lot more, but Jimmy Fikes, Butch Gilbert, and Mickey Riggs. Those three got on the phone and started calling and visiting and rallying in the community. They only, as they know, because they've been in this community for they know where the support was. And the guy's name that needs to be mentioned is Joe Iracane. Joe Iracane at that time was the president of the board, and cast a vote yes. That I don't know the dynamics of how the board worked, but I knew that vote was the difference in not having football and having football. And he was on that 52 team, if I'm not mistaken. Is that?
No, he didn't play with Jimmy. Late 50s.
Late 50s?
A little later in the 50s, yes.
So he understood football and what that meant. So Joe Iracane needs a pat on the back and a tip of the hat because he was very helpful.
He's always been a strong supporter of our athletic program. And that boardroom that day, I'm standing in the back of the room trying to be as close to the wall as I can to be a fly on the wall. And I've got this hand here, and I'm going, one. I knew what the total had to be. And when I hit that magic number, boy, I was so relieved. And Lou Marciani, bless his heart, he worked awful hard too, and he was terribly relieved.
Because he had come, I think he'd only been here about a year, and he had kind of cast his lot. And on his watch and my watch, we were little football. So this was
when he interviewed, the morning he interviewed, my job with the interviewees for the AD was to pick them up at the hotel, have a cup of coffee and a donut with them, get them to their first meeting, and then report to the president and give my opinions and all that. But anyhow, that was my what I did with the people. But as Lou and I got into my car and started toward campus and coming in Scottsville Road, he says, "I've got a couple questions for you." And the first question he asked me was, "What are the prospects of our playing 1A football?"
Yeah.
And my reaction was, and of course that's where he was going with football.
Yeah.
That's where he wanted to go. My reaction was, someday, maybe. Right now, probably not ready. But someday, I think that might happen. And then when when it all came down that day, you and Lou went to the president's office. When I saw him, he told me what happened, and he looked at me and said, "Paul, what will we do if we don't have football?
Yeah.
How can we do this without football?"
Yeah.
He worked awful hard along. I know Jimmy was very involved, and the others, and you spearheaded it, and it took a lot of people. One person probably could not have done it. It took a lot of people, and the bottom line is it was done, and the efforts that came down that year are still being felt today and will be for years and years to come. Things then, help me here, 96, 97 started to come out of that in such a manner that we started building it that early toward the 2002 team.
Something happened after we lost football. We had a difficult time recruiting.
Oh, yeah.
We'd go into homes and, Coach, Western Kentucky, we love Western Kentucky, we love our son to go there, but football may only be there another year. Maybe next year they'll decide to suspend it, and there's nothing you're going to be able to do about it. So we went down to Vanderbilt. Jerry DiNardo was the head coach, and he was running the I-Bone. A little different than we ran it, but he was running the I-Bone, the triple option, where it used to be out of the wishbone look, the fullback and the two backs flanking a little bit deeper than the fullback, but he was running it out of an I formation. So you could run your I formation plays and still run the triple option. So we went down there, and I can't tell you how gracious he was. He didn't assign us to a coach. He took us into a room, Jerry himself. There were Rick Densdorf was with us, and maybe another coach. Laid the fate down. He said, "Okay, here's the 4 plays you need. You need these 4 running plays and 2 pass plays." He gave us the whole thing, gave us the tapes, gave us the playbooks, went on the board with it, coached us like we were freshmen coming into his program. We came back that spring we're talking, and put it in. Went back after spring practice, and he critiqued it for us. So now we had an offense where you didn't have to recruit the same way, what the academies have done for a long time. And Eddie Thompson came along. And Eddie Thompson was built for that offense. And he could run it. Exciting guy. And so then now we had an offense, we have credibility, we were able to score points, not stopping people like we'd want, but at least we were exciting. People wanted to come out, I think, and watch what we were doing offensively. Then that year, in January, I was sitting in the office, ready to leave, to be honest with you, thinking this is crazy. Jim came in, unannounced. He was with the our Jim. He was with the Chicago Bears, and he was gone. He had a place down in Orlando, and he was driving down, and unannounced, stopped in, and I'm sitting there in the middle of recruiting season. He said, "Ted, what's going on?" I said, "Jim, this is hopeless. I mean, we're out there, we're pounding our heads against the wall. We're getting nowhere. This doesn't sound like you." I'm really disappointed. He said, "You're here working. You need to be working." And he says, "How can I help?" Can't think of a way. He said, "What if you're needing 2 coaches. You're 2 coaches short. What if I came on as a full-time assistant at no pay, and just recruit?" And I said, "Why don't we?" So we called Dr. Meredith, and he agreed to do it. So they gave him a contract at no pay. He had to take the recruiting test, which is I said, "Well, Jim, you got to take the test." He said, "Hey, I graduated from the University of Michigan. It's an open book. How hard can it be?" So he passed the test. Now I crossed my heart on this one. We bought a recruiting service, and took Florida. I said, "Jim, here's Florida. You're going to Orlando. First name on the list is a quarterback from Manatee High School by the name of Willie Taggart." So Jim just passed the test. Give me the, "Hello, Willie, this is Jim Harbaugh. You know Jim Harbaugh?" And Willie can tell the story better, but only Jim Harbaugh I know is one playing with Chicago Bears. This is the one. He said, "I'm working here with my dad at Western Kentucky." Willie had no idea. I don't think we were Western Kentucky. He said, "I'm coming to Florida next week. I'll be in Manatee High School on Tuesday at lunch." And so Willie thought it was one of his friends pulling a joke on him. So Tuesday, he's sitting in the cafeteria, and somebody comes up and said, "Coach from Western Kentucky by the name of Jim Harbaugh is here to see you." Again, he thought these guys had taken it right to the end, really working him over. So there's Jim Harbaugh. So he comes, and a couple of his teammates come with him. One went to Nebraska. So he comes, and sure enough, he signs. That we had the offense. We had Eddie Thompson. Now we got this guy, Willie Taggart, coming in. And then for 4 years, I mean, read the books, read the record books. I mean, he literally put our program right on his shoulders. We were competitive in every game. We might have gone to a playoff. Now that started the break the playoff thing. And then Willie stayed on as a intern and graduate assistant. And then in 2002, he was the coordinator, offensive coordinator, who called all our plays. So that speeded it up as well. But Jim and John, I have to mention John's name because he's coaching at Cincinnati and Indiana. So he's putting these lists together. He's going into these schools in Florida, basically. He's got an Indiana and Cincinnati list, and he's got a Western Kentucky list. So the Western Kentucky list goes directly to Jim. So now Jim's on the ground, and but John's feeding him all the information. So the two of them, Mel Mitchell, remember Mel?
Oh yeah, very
Played
well.
with the Saints.
One of the great athletes we've ever had on this campus.
John found him. Jim recruited him. So those two were working together. Tom Crean was talking us off the ledges. You know, he was here. Great line Tom had. It's a great line. So I'm quitting. I'm done. I can't do it. I'll go home. So Jackie knows I'm ready to throw in the towel. So she calls Tom. Were they dating then, Jackie? Were they married? Dating. So Tom, I come home about 7 o'clock at night, and Tom said, "Come on, let's take a walk." So we start walking around our house, around our block there, and he goes like this. Now I'm telling you, this is the honest to God's truth. He goes, "Jack, what are your plans if you quit?" I said, "I don't know. I have no plan. I have no job. I'm just going to quit." He said, "Well, I've been giving that some thought." He said, "Joni and I are thinking about getting married, and we're not making a lot of money. And I don't think Joni and I could support you and Jackie and the dog on what we're making. So if I were you, I'd maybe think about it a little bit longer."
Keeping my job.
About keeping your job, because if we're not going to be able to support you. So it was kind of humorous at the time, and so we stuck around. But back to what our original premise here. The '82 team was the reason. Them staying was the reason. And then there was a sign in the locker room. You know, it's those who stay will be champions. And we went back to that, guys. There may not be a championship when you're here, but we're going to have a championship. Never thinking the national championship. I thinking the OVC or the something, but never thinking national championship. And then in 2002, when we won it, it really became prophetic. I think that all worked out. And it's so nice that the university has invited the '92 team, because they need to be recognized for their contribution to that championship team.
They were certainly will occupy a spot in Western history of our athletic program, our history of our football program, unlike any other team.
Right.
No other team here has faced that in that sort of situation, and survived it. And survived it to become the kind of strength in the program that it is today. The 2000 team, there are a number of those guys going to be here. The local newspaper yesterday, I don't know if you've read that story or not. We're talking, you're quoted in there, and it's a good story, and talking about the talent that we had in '01 as compared to the chemistry we had in '02.
Yeah. There's a thing that I learned a long time ago at Michigan. There's the team. There's nothing more important than the team. Every decision is made on the best interest of the team. If it's good for our team, we do it. If it's not good, we don't do it. And I think the 2002 team epitomized that rallying cry.
That four-letter word,
the team,
was the strength of that team.
It was the strength of the team. Now, we had better. Joe Jefferson was on that 2001
Mel.
team. Mel Mitchell was on that 2001 team. We had a lot of really talented players. I think Dante Pimpleton and Jason Johnson were quarterbacks on that team. Very, very good quarterback. But the 2002 team, what happened was magic.
That's one of the great sports stories. When I left the press box in the stadium in the evening after the Western Illinois game, I wondered what was happening. We knew we'd lost some talented people, but we had a core back. We knew we could have a good football season. Nobody expected a national championship. But after that shutout loss to Western Illinois at home, I was pretty down. I'm sure y'all were too, wondering where we were and where we were going, and never would have dreamed on that evening that 12 weeks later, whatever it was, on December 20th, that we'd be playing in Chattanooga.
But you hit it right on the head, Jackie. This has never been discussed. This is the first time this has ever been discussed. I can't remember when it was, Jackie. The Western Illinois game, and then there was a Youngstown State game in there. After that,
Illinois State was Illinois State next.
They were. It might have been Illinois then. Was it Youngstown State?
We both of them early. Northern Iowa was an important game.
That's the next one. That was the key one. That was the turning point.
Yeah.
But in that stretch, there was a time I came home, and we talked about this quitting and all that stuff in '92. I know it wasn't going to happen, but that was it. I told her this. I didn't know whether I should quit right then, walk away from it and let somebody else do it, because I'd felt that, that we were getting a diminishing return. And you described it, very well.
That was after that day, I just didn't know, and I thought, dang, we're better than that.
Exactly.
We should be better.
And I felt that same way, and I felt that they'd been listening to my voice for 13, 14 years. They needed another voice, and I told Jackie, and Jackie's the one that walked me off the bridge on that one. She said, you started it, and you've always told our kids that you don't quit anything, and you're not going to quit. You're not going to quit now. And she laid it out on the line the way I could understand it. And I did very little. And I don't know if any, but then the Northern Illinois game, that was our sixth game, if I remember. We were 2-3.
Northern Iowa game.
Northern
right?
Iowa.
Right. Yeah.
Northern Iowa game. We were 2-3.
Yeah.
And we went there, and we had not had much success there. It's a dome. It's a small dome. I mean, they jiggle their keys. And they know when you're on offense.
It's a flat surface.
Oh, a flat surface, and it's a hard surface. And the crowd knew how to get into the game as a crowd, and they were packed in there. We hadn't done well there. We lose that game, it's over. And there's no chance for the playoffs. Now we're 2-4, and it could have gone, it could have really gone south.
Well, we knew, but people nowadays may not realize this, but we knew at the time the time had passed where you could get in the playoffs with 4 losses.
Right, exactly.
So we were playing. We played 10 straight playoff games, whatever it was in the conference, plus the playoff games themselves, and each game was the end of at least your aspirations and your goals for the season. Any
time we stubbed our toe in any one of those remaining games,
there was
no margin of error. And in that game, we played the first half, and we had the lead. And I haven't studied anything for a long time, so I'm kind of, you could be proven wrong on this, but it was a tight game. We had maybe had a little bit of an edge statistically, but the score wasn't. It wasn't. It was win or lose. And we were in the locker room, and we did our adjustments. Offense did their adjustments. Defense did their adjustments. And we were ready to walk out. And this had never happened in all the years that I had coached. Jason Michael was our quarterback. Mm-hmm. He's now the tight ends coach for the San Diego Chargers. And he said, "Coach," and he wasn't a loud guy. He was a cerebral guy, great leader.
Academic All-American.
Academic All-American. He goes like this. He said, "Coach, can I speak to the team? The floor is yours." And he gave one of the great talks. Here's basically what he said. And again, I paraphrase. I can't remember it, but he goes like this. "You know what? This team's too good to play the way we've played these last few weeks." He said, "This is my last year. It's over for me. I've been the starting quarterback here for five games. This is it for me. And I'm telling each one of you that I'm going to go out and I'm going to bust my butt. I'm going to lay it on the ground. For these next 30 minutes, I'm never, ever going to play harder. I'm never going to play with more enthusiasm. I'm never going to be committed to anything in my life that I am to these last 30 minutes. I'm challenging you. If you feel the same way I do, you walk out the door with me. If you don't feel that way, turn around, take your damned equipment off, and stay in the locker room. Because we that go out will not tolerate anybody that doesn't play with that kind of enthusiasm." Never said another word, Paul. Mm. He just turned his back and walked out the door. And these guys were going, "Oh my God." And the coaches and everybody's trying to get in behind him. Paul, that second half, we kicked their butts. Yeah. Every way a butt could be kicked. We ran it. We passed it. We stopped them. We tackled them. We blocked them. Jeremy Johnson popped one for about 60 yards.
Complete package.
He hit a trap for a touchdown. We're throwing the ball. I mean, it was like they had they didn't get 100 yards total offense in the second half. And we walked in the locker room afterwards and said, "Hey, this is the way it could be. This is the kind of team we could be." Exactly the way you described it. And all at once now we were playing from here, not from here. And Jason Michaels is the guy that turned it all around for us.
He was a wonderful story. He transferred in here from Army with 4 years left, and had to play as a freshman, if I remember right. Started a number of games as a freshman, and then did mostly special teams for 2 years.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to you about in the preseason his senior year, and you'd announced that Jason Michaels, our quarterback, coming out of spring practice. And a lot of people were kind of wondering,
we hadn't done it for 4 years. What
right.
makes you think he's going to do it now?
He'd lost the job before, and he didn't have that much experience. And I don't know whether you remember or not. I mentioned a name to you. The name was Steve Larimore.
That's right. I do recall that.
And I said, "You ever heard of Steve Larimore, Coach?" No. And I told you about the 75 team.
Yeah.
And the rookie quarterback with no experience that was built about like Jason. A step too slow, was a mediocre thrower, and all of that sort of thing. I said that he did that with that team. There's no reason that Jason Michael can't succeed with this team.
We changed our offense. If you remember, we junked the I-bone as being our predominant
He was
offense.
not an option quarterback.
We went to the I, and it took us those first 3 or 4 games. We were running an offense we didn't have a grasp of, but they got used to it. Roscoe Eccles became a top flight tailback. Jeremy Johnson became a big league fullback.
He was a nice shot in the arm that year for new talent.
And our offensive line was young. Joe Washington was on that line, and Eric Revelette. Some of those guys were on that line.
One of the seniors, though, on that line that I'll always remember is Chris Price.
Chris Price, captain.
Yeah, quite a player.
And a leader.
Yes.
And he and Jason shared that. This is our last time around, and we're not going to let ourselves down. And we caught fire. Yeah. And then we ran the regular season table and got into the playoffs.
Buster Ashley was a youngster on that team.
Buster Ashley was
started.
I'm trying to think of, there was a youngster from Bowling Green here.
Daniel Withrow.
Daniel Withrow was on that team, I think.
Yeah, was he O-line?
Yeah, he was like an old offensive guard.
Okay. Right. I was trying to remember which
and
line
we
he
were
played.
big.
Yeah,
I mean,
they were good-sized kids.
Our tight end was a guy named Sanders.
Rufus Sanders?
Rufus Sanders. He's a 380-pound tight end. He wore a tight end number, but he didn't get.
He was an outside tackle, wasn't he?
That's all he was. He would knock him 5 yards off the ball about every time he hit him. But then we got into a rhythm, and it all played out.
I remember first time I ever saw Willie Taggart. He was in for fall camp. I was waiting for you to finish a quarterbacks meeting outside the door there in the old stadium, and the quarterbacks filed out, 3, 4 of them, whatever, 5, whatever we had at that time. And I'm kind of looking at them. Of course, I know I guess it was Daryl Houston and for whatever. And then they head out, and I said, "That must be Taggart." And you come out, and you're ready for me, and I said, "That Taggart, kid from Florida?" You said, "Yeah." I said, "Prospect or suspect?" "Oh, player." That was your response to me, and that was my first look at Willie. You said, "Oh, a player."
I bet you really were impressed with his ankles, weren't you?
Those little bitty things.
Those little bitty things.
Practically wear a ring on them.
Oh, man, he's not. He was skinny. I mean, he was.
You talk about mentioned Eddie Thompson. I shall never forget the night he ran for 309 yards. Mark Mathis. Do you remember Mark with the Owensboro newspaper? He was we're in the press box, and he's. We're going in there, and Eddie kept going. The coaches were going. They kept going to the right side, and of course, he had those little hands. He'd do that. He had to do a two-hander. He couldn't do a one-hand fake. He'd do this. Those guys would go that way, and he'd go this way. He'd been doing this the whole half, and he had almost 200 yards at halftime. And Mark turned around and got up and says, "Paul, got a question." What? He says, "Do they have any coaches up here?" everybody was seeing what Willie was doing. He says, their coaches can't be. You'd think they'd put somebody in that hole.
I thought we were going to have to give him oxygen.
Oh, gee whiz.
Didn't that set a record? Wasn't that a...
Oh, yeah, it was an NCAA record, and I think it might, I'm not as up with it as it was, but I think it may still be an NCAA 1AA record for rushing by quarterback.
But was that against Southern Illinois here at home, like on a Thursday night?
And we had to block a field goal to still win the game.
Hey, you remember that? You remember what happened on that? They blocked the field goal, and we just have to let it go. And I think we had somebody that tried to jump on out in the end zone or something like that. If we'd have bobbled the ball in the end zone, we'd have lost the ball. We'd have lost the game on a blocked field goal, if I remember right. Danny McGrath was on that team and made a smart play in the end zone, and somebody he jumped on it or something.
Seemed like we had a freshman that blocked it, though. Oh, well. But anyhow, I remember thinking at the end that they got within field goal range, and we were up 31-29, I believe. Yeah. And I said, "Oh, it'd be awful to lose this game after the performance we've seen by Eddie, and somebody got a hand on that ball." But then that I remember. I say that I remember Eddie for that play particularly, and he had a lot of great plays, but so many plays from Willie Taggart. To watch him for 4 years was one of the most exciting, one of the most thrilling things I was ever involved in.
But as I say, that to do that in a situation 4 years to play like that, but playing with the football resting on his shoulders, so to speak, because you just never realized, you just didn't understand, or I didn't understand it. This thing it wasn't solid yet, but he performed at that level with that kind of pressure on him.
Yeah, and then when he got out, he got into coaching.
Right.
And I was so sorry to see him leave. I understood why he did. As he said, "Paul, I need to broaden myself a little bit, broaden myself." And then I was so excited when it became obvious that he had a real chance to come back. Yeah. And he's certainly done the job.
Yeah. Think about Willie. He had when he left, when he was playing, you could see it, but you really saw it when he coached. He has a quality that very few coaches have, and that's to see a big picture. Some coaches can hone in on the right guard. They can hone in on what's going on. Willie could see it all from sideline to he could see 22 players. He could see his 11. He could see their 11. And when you have that kind of perspective to where you can do that, it gives you a fantastic advantage in coaching a game. I saw it as a coach, especially when in 2002 he was our signal caller, and I see it now. Paul, he is one of the top, in my judgment, one of the top coaches in all the NCAA, because he has such great judgment. An interesting, Ozzie Newsome is the general manager for the Ravens. He's from Alabama. That's where he played for Bear Bryant. Got a son playing down there. Last week when we were there, he pulled me aside. He said, "I just want to tell you two things." He said, "I have friends in Tuscaloosa that saw the Western Kentucky-Alabama game, and they were amazed at that football team, especially on offense. The way they challenged them with shifts and motions, did some different things that created problems from Alabama that other people weren't creating." He said, "We had scouts down there to say they don't turn the ball over, that Western Kentucky makes that a football game.
Very close football.
He said, you should be very, very proud of that young man that's coaching there. But that's that big picture again. 2 years.
That was probably one of the closest games ever played at that score.
Yep.
If that had been one or two turnovers, it might have been a one-touchdown game.
Right.
Willie's gotten a lot of credit, a lot of comment on that, and it was obvious with what Alabama did to Arkansas the next week. Not to mention our win over Kentucky, which is, it's only a step for a stepper. It's another step in the right direction, and it's altogether more sweet because it was a state rival school. But that's a step toward where Willie and the program want to go.
Yeah, we didn't see the game. John and I were in Philadelphia last week for the Ravens game, and we were tracking it at the end, and they scored in overtime, and then on the tracker, we're reading it. Western WKU calls timeout. I said, "John, I think he's going for two." John said, "Why would he do that?" I said, "Well, I think this guy has a feeling that his team emotionally drained, his team was physically drained, And if you're going to win it, you got to win it right now. You can take it long. The percentages go against you the longer you let this thing drag out. And that's what separates him from the other coaches. He knew that, and he was willing to roll the dice and take his chances right there. Had a great play called and victory. But this young man is special. You know, and one more point. I don't mean to interrupt you. There's an adage. Tom Crean gave us this, and we all use it. Not me anymore, but John and Jim use this, and Willie does too. Coach your team. Coach your team. You don't get caught up in all this other stuff. Coach your team. And whenever you're with the press, when you talk to the press, you're not talking to the press. You're talking to your team. And Willie does that well. Willie does that well. He talks to his team. His team believes in him, and he doesn't throw them under the bus. That's
kind of where I was going. Not only the nuts and bolts of football, the game itself, but Willie has just demonstrated in my mind a great deal of talent in working with young people and knowing when to push what button and getting a lot out of his kids. And that is also, and that in turn, I think, affects his ability to recruit as well as recruited. All of that is a package.
When these kids come for recruiting, I mean, they're going to listen to the players. And the players can talk about trust, and the players can talk about, someone that, believes in them, trusts them. They want to, everything being fairly equal. That's going to shift the tide and send some players your way.
Well, there's nothing in Willie's DNA except positive.
Yeah.
He is a positive individual, and it reflects in the play and the conduct of his players.
Yeah.
Exceptional.
No question.
Enjoyed it.
Well, both Jackie and I have a special place in our heart for Western Kentucky. I think one of the most beautiful words in the English language is home. Yeah. Homecoming, and driving in here yesterday and, taking the route that we had taken so often. I mean, you had some butterflies in your stomach and the pride of coming home. So we're deeply appreciative to Western Kentucky University and Bowling Green and all Southwest Kentucky for welcoming the Harbaughs into their family.
Well, that's been something we've been doing a long time. We'll continue to do at all levels of your family.
Well, thank you so much.
It's always good to see you back in town.
Thank you, Paul.
And look forward to the next time.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Had a great time.
Enjoyed it.
Thank you.